Diana, but why can't you understand my burning love? Of course, the Golden Stallion here with you for part 2 of a series, a 5-part series, that is all around the hentai Fencer of Minerva. And the part 1 of this series was actually the first Patreon content I ever did. And this was a little over a month ago, I guess.
We did it.
Yeah, we did it. Of course, being joined by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy. So, if you didn't hear the first part of this, I definitely recommend you go listen to that. Now, I think I set it up. If you go to Patreon, what you can do is that you can search through the sounds through tags, and there's the tag hentai, and you can just click on the tag hentai, and the first part will pop right up. And I'm going to be releasing the rest of the parts of this here over the next few days, probably. So anyway, Stephanie, of course, thank you so much for being here. We're recording this from the bed because really, if you're going to watch hentai, you want to watch it from the bed.
Style.
So, and straight up spoilers, folks. I mean, like, we're going to talk about every aspect of the show. Again, it's a 5-part show, no pun intended. It's a 5-part miniseries, hentai miniseries. So, we're going to release an episode, and they're short. We're only going to do like 20-30 minutes for each one. So we already did the first one, so that gives you the introduction to the characters, that being Sho and Diana, who are the main characters in this one as well. And we're only in part 2 here. This is episode 2, The Dawn. Of course, what is it the dawn of? And it picks up, really, it leaves where the first one left off, where Sho and Diana, of course, Diana is this princess, now come slave. Well, wait, that came out funny.
Come slave is about right.
Yeah. And Sho who is her like childhood friend that ended up surviving this coup in the kingdom of Doria. Sho is now, her master.
Man.
He's a man.
Somehow she goes to become a slave because she's sick of being a princess.
Right, she ends up getting kidnapped by nomads.
Yes, and then he buys her or something, or
he wins her because he defeats the chieftain.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, of the children of the wind or whatever. That's the name of the nomad tribe. And so this opens up with those two being together. There's still some of the shenanigans where King Randus, who is Diana's father, is trying to find her because he's trying to marry her off to Prince Dunan of Gupta, or of Gupta. And that's kind of where this opens up, and eventually you find out, we get back to Sho and Diana kind of, frolicking around in the woods, more or less, and Diana seems to be very happy to be with her childhood sweetheart, even though he is effectively her master.
She loves being the slave, though.
Oh boy! Well, so it opens up like, I mean, we can start off on this because it doesn't take much time to get into the sex.
Yes.
And Sho and Diana, or D as he calls her, they she wants it, and like she even says, "Oh, you're such a terrible master. You're not taming the fire inside of me."
Yes, it's very corny, but
yeah.
She basically says that she wants to bone. And
right.
And he's like, all right, well, I mean, what am I going to do about that except give it to you?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're alone in a field in the woods.
Yeah, they're like in these trees and kind of a field, sort of half and half.
But so that scene, mm-hmm. and so then they have sex in the field, and she's like, oh, I want to be together forever and ever. Sho! And she does a lot of that. That's why I kept screaming Sho, because that's like the whole show is about that. Anyway, I thought that first scene, the sex scene, was mm-hmm. really was like the hottest scene in the whole thing that I've seen so far.
Right. Yeah.
Except for maybe the female one where the female slaves are like training her.
Yeah, when it's this lesbian orgy effectively
that's pretty
going
hot.
on. Yeah.
But,
that's in the part 1. Yeah.
But yeah, like that was like a nice, normal kind of vanilla heterosexual scene in the woods, and I thought that was just really cute, because obviously they love each other, and that turns me on.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, in case you're just tuning into this, hentai, of course, is animated porn. It's Japanese anime, porn. Just in case someone didn't listen to the first part, but they're jumping right ahead and listening to this. It's a very popular thing in Japan, far more popular than live action porn, and I think it allows for a lot of interesting things, including there's some humor to this first sex scene because Sho never loses his clothes, but somehow he's scooping.
He has his clothes completely on
the whole time.
She's mostly naked.
Right, and this gets back to, and I'll just mention
and
it
the
briefly.
acting is just comically bad. But it's
you
funny,
as a voice actor know all too well just how bad this voice acting is. Now, if we played the Japanese track, it's a lot more solid. Like, I mean,
is it? Okay, I was wondering about that.
Right, they bring on some of the best.
Oh wow!
As far as that goes, but in in English, they definitely they might have hired the cheap seats, or hired from the cheap seats, I should say. But because it's animated, it really I think it allows for kind of a more tasteful. I don't know, like it gives you options, and that's one of the beautiful things about hentai itself. Is that a lot of times it can really give you capabilities that just aren't possible unless you're going to use CGI, which at that point it's still kind of animated, right? But that you really can't do in live action.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like the first sex scene in this. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, they never show any genitalia.
No, okay, that's the point I was going to make.
Yep.
Now we talked about this in depth in part 1 of this series. As to why that is, and this comes out of Japan's obsession with the Victorian era in the early part of the 20th century, and these rules just never seem to go away, even after pretty much when the U.S. conquered Japan, with World War II. This was the U.S. really changed a lot of the laws. Definitely made things obviously favor countries besides Japan and whatever, but one of the things that they kept in place were a lot of these very conservative laws that says you cannot show genitalia, effectively on film, on celluloid. So FenServe Minerva very carefully, and I think that's why the clothes never really come off. So they never have to explain why you're not seeing the dick. Because that way you don't have to show the genitalia at all, and it works all the way around this rule.
Yeah, I mean, a dick would have been the least kinky thing about this show.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
They're showing some very adult themes,
Right. Yeah, so the sex scene was good. So you like that. I mean...
I thought it was super cute and sweet.
In comparison to, say, the lowest end live action scene that you've enjoyed, how would you rate it? How would you compare it?
The lowest end live action scene that I've seen or that I've enjoyed?
Well, like that you've enjoyed, that you've watched.
First of all, I think that this series is better than a lot of the live action porn that's out there.
Oh, I agree.
Way better.
Right on.
Yeah. And
so you think this could beat some of the live action porn?
I think it beats a lot of it. Oh, it beats a lot of it.
Yeah, so that's kind of
that's
the
what
point
I was
of my
struggling
question.
with, because I haven't seen a lot of live action that I've enjoyed.
Sure. Oh, well, that's a fair point to bring up.
I've seen more of it. I've seen a lot of it. Maybe about 20% I've enjoyed.
Sure.
Let's just put it that way.
I think that's totally fair. So, do you have any other comments on the first sex scene?
No, just that I thought it was really cute and sweet.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny.
And it turned me on.
Well, there you go. And we'll take care of that after this. But, excuse me. But, one of the things that I think is kind of comical, and a lot of hentai does this, and you definitely get more of it in this episode than perhaps in the first one, is that when, not so much with men, but when females come in hentai, they do this, epic, showing this, grand vista, and then, kind of a transparent version of, almost a spiritual version of the woman that
where she's floating in space,
right,
smiling and spinning around,
and then she's giving a really loud orgasm and everything.
Yeah,
that's definitely prevalent in this. This is one of the things I really like about hentai, kind of like how I like about comic books, is to where a lot of stuff that people often they think is either sexist or something like that in comic books, is really a narrative tool. It's really not meant to be sexist. I've talked about this in various Q&A episodes for Patreon. And I like that that ethereal orgasm, effectively, that gets shown off, becomes a narrative tool. And you know exactly what's going on. You get to know does it really matter? For most people, when they're watching, regular live-action American porn, they probably don't give a shit about this, okay? But, a lot of times you can't tell you cannot tell when a woman's having an orgasm.
Yeah, because they're screaming the whole time.
Right, yeah, because the whole thing is oftentimes kind of a joke.
And the focus is not on the female's pleasure, really.
Right.
But you're right, like with this, it's telling a story. It's that she's actually really enjoying this.
Yeah, and
she's so happy that she feels like she's left her body and gone to Cloud 9 in the heavens,
Absolutely. I like a lot about that. And in fact, it really brings, pun intended, it lets you know when the climax is there.
Yep.
There's no ambiguity over the fact that was an orgasm.
Yep.
And a
great one.
Yeah, and a great one, right? And I do like the fact that it highlights, the female pleasure, and that orgasm is so important. Now, to some degree, that's kind of a side effect, I think, of these Japanese quasi-Victorian laws that don't allow, that don't allow a whole lot of shots of the penis and everything. You know what I mean? And so showing the guy come would probably be a little more. A little more difficult.
They did show him coming in that first scene.
You hear it. You know what's happening.
It was mostly from him grunting and just
exactly
being like,
yeah.
And then he makes kind of a face.
Yeah. But I love that. I think it's a great narrative tool to be able to pull off this very kind of ethereal, like I say, ethereal orgasm of sorts. I think that's wonderful. To kind of, I don't know, just to. Yeah, I think it brings a lot more to sex. It can illustrate sex in such an artsy way that porn just really can't do. To describe more, not of the spiritual. I don't ever like using the word spiritual, but of the connection of of everything that's going on. Kind of around the person. It's one of the things I enjoy about hentai when it's really well done. So anyway, that's cool. I'm glad you actually really like that scene.
That was my favorite scene so far.
Right on. Yeah. So I can tell you, and we won't get into them now because you haven't seen them yet. But there's some scenes you're just going to love because in fact, you said at the end of this one, you said it's like, wow, all this happened, and it's only the second episode. What the hell else is going to happen?
I feel
just
like
wait.
It's almost like a whole series has gone by already.
Right.
Because there's been a story that's gone through the first 2 episodes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, anyway, so we move on from the sex scene. That happens.
Yeah,
everybody's kind of happy-go-lucky.
So they have this very happy sex scene in the meadow, and then shit starts to hit the fan.
Yeah, so what happens is Prince Dunan, who is supposed to be marrying, this gal that just got stooped, by her lifelong love.
Princess
Diana. And Prince Dunan is trying to find her. And so he's riding on these black dragons. He looks very menacing, flying these things.
The dragons are like little horse dinosaur things.
Well, these are the big dragons.
Those are the flying ones. Those definitely look like dragons. They've got like 2 heads.
Right. There's these odd bipedal horses with antennae.
Those look like dragon dinosaur horses.
Yeah, they're kind of like dino horses. They're interesting. I think they have a cool look. But anyway, so you love people could only see. Anyway, so Prince Dunan, he kind of knows what happened. He says, okay, so this Princess Diana must have gotten captured by nomads. She got turned into a slave. I know how to, I'm a bad dude. I know how to deal with these guys. And so he goes after the nomads, the exact nomads that, yes, Princess Diana, did end up with, and that show kind of, inadvertently sort of became the head of, because he had that fight with the chieftain and everything in the first episode. And they, the nomads are pretty tough, and they kind of scare, or they don't scare, but they kind of they don't fall for Dunan shit. But then eventually Dunan does corner one of them on their own and sort of tortures them, and then finds out what exactly happened, because the nomads know, because the nomads, are now friends with Sho and Diana. from the first episode, and so Dunan finds out where exactly Sho and Diana are going, and Dunan goes and gets them, and the nomads figure out that, hey, this could be dangerous. We got to go warn Sho, but they can't get to him in time. Sho and Diana, are surprised.
Yeah.
Diana gets captured. Diana effectively takes a knife to herself. Doesn't impale herself, but points one at herself and says, "If you don't let Sho go, I'm going to kill myself. And you get nothing." And so, Dunan runs away with Diana, and they all go back to Doria, where her father is and everything. And Sho ends up, kind of running off. He's mad. He wants to go save her. So Sho ends up meeting with the nomads who were trying to come and get him, and they all end up running back to the big nomad camp. Now, change gears, okay? What happens here is that now Prince Dunan has his wife, has his queen, and he knows she was a slave and all this, and he is going to, he's going to try.
He's very sadistic, and then he does all this BDSM shit to humiliate her, to defile her, to punish her.
Yeah,
and
he wants to get rid of her pride. That's what he says his plan is. And honestly, this turns into, so she has, Princess Diana has all of these, her own slaves, her female slaves. And then Dunan has, his
but
whole
she's
troop
nice
of
to
people.
her. She has like servants. I mean,
they're more like
they're
servants.
like come with the castle.
Right.
They're not really like sex slaves like she was.
Right. So her servants and Dunan's slaves and henchmen and all that, they're all in the princess's bedroom. And unfortunately, this really turns into a rape scene.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no other way to describe it. Even eventually Dunan says, "Look, if you don't do what I say, if you don't like literally do everything I say, whatever sexual stuff, I'm going to kill your whole family. I'm going to kill Sho. I'm going to kill everybody."
Yeah, he said he would kill thousands of people.
Right, and so then of course she gets on her knees and says, "Master, do with me what you will." Blah blah blah. All that crap. And yeah, like you said, it turns into a whole BDSM scene.
Yeah, he ties her up to a bed and
whips
he
her,
and then he basically
he actually has his henchmen kind of have their way with her at first.
Yeah, first he has his henchmen strip off her clothes and forcibly spread her legs open and show her naked body to everybody in the room with all the servants, and then he tells them to all laugh at her.
Yeah.
And they do, because
really
they're afraid of him. And so then he kills them all. And then he ties her up to a bed and whips her until she's bleeding. And then he rapes her, basically.
Yeah.
And they insinuate that she actually likes it, even though she's saying no, and screaming and stuff. But they sort of insinuate that she's actually turned on, even though she doesn't want to be, and
or that she's being pleasured, even though she hates it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, which is, well, I mean, and there is again that whole ethereal orgasm, kind of narrative tool gets used again, to where you kind of see her kind of floating above the bed,
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
that part.
in a translucent way.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Right, but again, she had an orgasm. There's no ambiguities seen here. This isn't the Fountainhead where it's okay, did she get raped or didn't she?
Right.
And what happened? But anyway, so I I'm curious. I mean, how do you feel about that? You can get it that this is storytelling. But
I don't like it because
sure, that's fair.
I think people, especially young people, are going to watch that and they're going to get really confused about what is actually rape and what it Also, these are very adult kind of things. They're I would say kind of varsity level sex acts. You know what I mean? And if someone's seeing this as their first introduction to sex, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty complicated for them to be able to understand and process what's actually going on.
Yeah. And
that could really confuse some people and get some wires crossed in their brains so that they don't understand the different, or that they think all sex is supposed to be like that. You know, that if you're not begging to be whipped and in pain, then you're not doing it right or something.
Yeah.
They might think that you're supposed to act very submissive and want to be a slave as a woman.
Right.
Which I think all that is dangerous, and confusing for young people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the important things to bring up, and I know you know this, Stephanie, but I mean, hentai, anime in general in Japan is not for kids. Like, I mean, there's some that's for kids, but it's for kids. Like, it's overly cute. It's ridiculous. But a lot of cartoons, I mean, is definitely meant for adults. But yeah, I think young people still do watch this.
It is meant for adults, but you can't change the fact that it's a cartoon, and it's almost like those. It's almost like those candy cigarettes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, like they're not really cigarettes, but you could say that that's being kind of marketed to children, or like the vape flavors that are like bubblegum and cotton candy. It's like, they're supposed to be marketed to people who are old enough to smoke, but in reality, it's actually very easy for a younger person to think that might be for them. And maybe they're right. Maybe it is kind of for them, but they can't legally do it or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think, like, you can say, oh yeah, kids shouldn't be watching anime porn or hentai, but of course kids are going to find it. Not kids, but like teenagers, or maybe younger. I mean, people who are probably too young to process and understand what's going on and don't have the resources like adults that they can talk to frankly about this stuff, or good sex ed resources that are going to give them like the real straight story in an unbiased way and tell them what's going on there. Like, people who don't have the resources or the maturity to really understand what's happening there are going to see this and get confused.
Sure. Well, I mean, 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's, this is something, I mean, boy, where to go with that? I think, so I agree with what you're saying. And like, because the first time I saw this, I was 18. Fortunately, I had a sex life before I saw this sort of thing. So, I want to say I knew what it was beforehand, but I agree. If this is like the first experience of what you think it's supposed to be all about, that could be problematic.
Which it could very well be.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of younger people see porn, or they see, I don't know, they read like BDSM kind of books. And they think like that's what it's supposed to be like, and if you're not into that, or if you don't naturally feel like that's what you want to do, then you're doing something wrong. Like there's teenagers, there's high school kids that think they should be doing anal, that think that, if they, like, if a boy like pressures them to have sex, or a girl or whatever, then they should definitely like give in and do it, and they should like be happy about it even if they're not really enjoying it or having fun. They think like the point is like pleasing their partner.
Well, I mean, and these are all concerns, and I'm not defending this. These are all concerns I have with 50 Shades of Grey. Like, same deal. It's like, this is probably where a lot of people are going to first see any kind of sex, because it was such a phenomenon. I mean, it's dead now. Nobody gives a shit anymore, and I doubt there's ever going to be another movie. But it was, it was a phenomenon. And I think a lot of people, and I'm not here to like speak against BDSM or whatever. That's not my point. But I don't think that like that's the first thing people should be seeing as far as the sexual experience.
I know. I feel so torn, and I want to tread lightly about that, because I know I have some friends that really like BDSM.
Sure.
And it's like the only way they can get turned on.
Sure.
And they love it, and it's just a part of who they are. For me, it is not a part of who I am.
Right.
I'm just vanilla. And it's not like I haven't learned about BDSM or tried it. I have, but I wanted to like it. I wanted to be into it because I thought it would be cool and edgy, and I thought it would be like different, And like I'm always the contrarian, so I would have loved it if I was naturally inclined towards it. But after trying it, what I found out was that no, I'm not into it.
Right.
So it's not my thing. I think, like, for some people, somewhere along the line, the association between pain or humiliation or various other BDSM-y stuff and sex got formed somehow, and now they like it as an adult, and that's how they get turned on. And maybe you shouldn't overthink it too much. Maybe you should just enjoy it if that's what you like, and consenting adults and all of that, safe, sane, consensual, right? Risk-aware, consensual kink. If that's your thing, okay, maybe go for it. But it's when it gets presented as like such that's the norm, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, everyone just likes this. Of course this is sexy, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that should be taken for granted that of course everyone finds it sexy, you know, because some people don't find it sexy.
Well, you know, good sex is something you learn. And you always start with the basics. Mm-hmm. And that's not the basics. Like, you know, I mean, that's my opinion on it. So yeah.
I agree. There's a lot more... There's more risks to it. There's more complicated, like, emotional dynamics. Yeah. And that's what turns some people on. But it's also something that makes it a varsity level kind of thing. Or at least not like your first kind of introduction to sex, I guess. I don't know.
Which, I mean, this whole series kind of, in many ways, kind of starts off with that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to bring up, I mean, you can say, and I think they kind of pulled this off, but there's a caveat, okay? The writers, you know, directors, and, I mean, anime has directors. They definitely make sure you know Dunan is really evil.
Yep.
Like, because at the end of it, after he's done humiliating Princess Diana, he kills everybody in the room. Mm-hmm. Because he's like, well, you all saw her get defiled, now you have to die. And, I mean, one could, if you're in a moment, you know, and if you're especially young or impressionable, like that, there's problems there, because then you're doing this what I consider ridiculous, this connection between sex and violence, which I think is a cultural creation. It's not anything that's, like, programmed.
Oh, yeah. I don't know about that. And I know that's a big, complicated subject.
That's a huge subject. I'm being very, very, you know, simple in describing it, but
I'm not blaming. Excuse me. I'm not blaming Fencer of Minerva for people's sexual fucked up problems, of course, because, you know, obviously it's just one show, and there's a huge amount of porn out there, and there's a huge amount of sexual descriptions of sex stuff in culture, in books and movies, and porn and anime porn. But I don't know. It's sort of part of a larger culture, you know, to some extent. Mm-hmm. And why do we find these things, like, you know, I guess to a certain extent, I can find some as a 32-year-old adult, I can find some elements of that story kind of sexy. Like, sure. I can get into the fantasy a little bit of like, oh yeah, it's a princess, but she's kind of sick of her humdrum life as a princess, so she decides to, you know, go try it out and see what it's like to be a sex slave. And then she has all these different sex experiences, and that sounds kind of fun. And she really loves this guy, and she wants to be his slave and have him be her master. That's kind of hot a little bit in a way. It wouldn't be probably the first thing I'd choose as far as a turn on, but I can get into it, you know, as part of the story, and it kind of goes with the whole medieval thing, you know.
Sure.
Torture chambers and Dungeons and Dragons.
The Iron Maiden.
Stuff. The Iron Maiden, yeah. It kind of goes with the whole theme, so it sort of sets the stage. You know, but, like, why do those themes come up of, like, humiliation and domination and submission and pain and evil villains, like, doing these sexual torture to people, you know, like...
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that...
Who thinks of this shit, basically?
Right. Well, that's... And you're hitting on my caveat with the whole thing. Is like, yes, they make it super clear that Dunan is not a good guy. What he's doing is not, you know, or at least by the narrative, is not good. I'm not judging other people, I'm just saying. But here's the thing, is that, you know, they put it in there anyway. Like, they show all this anyway. They do all this anyway because they know there's a segment that's going to watch this that likes that. That's into that gets them off. So, you know, I can say that they do a great job of, like, making sure you know what Dunan is doing. You know, a lot of what he does is evil, or that this is, like, you know, this is a rape scene. You know, all of this. But at the end of the day, they put it in, and, you know, that's because they're looking, you know, to appeal as broad, really, I guess you could say, a sexual audience as possible. You know, that's
there's a variety of how their sex scenes are portrayed.
Yeah, I mean, because there's some.
I don't know. I'm going to ask a rhetorical question here. Maybe you have an answer to it, but do most people just consider, like, plain old vanilla sex boring?
I think maybe some people have been conditioned for that.
Yeah, I don't know, because, like, in real life, I have never gotten bored with it.
No,
I don't know. I'm only 32
it.
years old, but...
Yeah, and vanilla doesn't mean there can't be more than two as well, but, you know...
Yeah, I mean, but even with two, you know, even vanilla heterosexual sex, I'm not sick of it yet.
No, right on. Hell yeah.
I'm not bored of it yet.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just doesn't get boring. I mean, the other stuff's great, too. Threesomes, you know, girl sex is great.
Hell yeah.
You know, but... I don't know, maybe I'm boring, or maybe everybody else is searching for increasing levels of stimulation when really they could get just a fine amount of stimulation from going with the quote boring stuff. Like, maybe you don't need to turn up the volume that much, you know what I mean?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know, it's tough because sex is so shamed, especially in the West, quote unquote. That, you know, maybe it gets tied in with a lot of other debasement, you know, and that's what's going on. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, this series shows off so many different aspects of it. Like, I mean, there's a point where, you know, like where Diana, you mentioned it earlier from episode 1, where Diana is getting kind of trained by all these other, you know, slave women and everything. And, you know, they're having they're having a time. But I mean, you know, one could argue to some degree that that's a rape scene of sorts, but the way that it gets portrayed, there's a lot more consensual language involved in that. Like, they'll ask, "Do you want us to stop?" and she's saying, "No, you know, I don't want you to." So I mean, so there's a very broad range.
And she, like, chose to become a slave too.
Well, I mean, at that point, maybe not so much.
Oh God! Now did I actually just make that argument?
Yeah,
she voluntarily
sold
herself.
Let's save that. Let's save that for the end, because that gets into the ending of it. But anyway, so let's shift gears. So the rape scene, problematic.
That didn't do it. That did not turn me on.
Right. I mean, and you know, the audience can be varied on that. Some of the audience probably enjoyed it, or other parts of the audience, myself, you know, we can watch that and say that's fucking evil. Yeah. You know,
it definitely made me hate the villain guy.
Right. So let's get into if you're all set with that conversation, let's tidy it up.
Sure.
And so what happens after that is you find out, you know, Sho gets together with the nomads, you know, these children of the wind and everything, and when he gets there, he finds out that, like, all the nomads around Minerva have all gotten together, and they're telling him, we're going to take over Doria. You know, we're going to conquer this, you know, this whole land. And now it's interesting because they get into the reasons why they're going to do this. Now Sho's on board because he wants to get his love back.
Yes.
You know, he wants to get Diana.
But everybody else has some gripes about the taxes.
It's hilarious. The very first thing they say is like, the taxes are ridiculous. Yeah. You know, and we've had enough of this, and we're going to take this shit down. And it's so funny to hear that. And that's pretty much the only complaint, and they repeat that complaint.
Yep.
Like, it's not like, well, you know, we just need some, you know, shoddy reason, but it kind of comes back up, and I'll get to that. But yeah. So they start planning this whole, you know, attack. And Sho, being the son of the original king of Doria, Bazar or whatever his name was, he knows secret ways to get into the castle.
Yes.
And to get into the town and everything. And so he's kind of leading the nomads, which you can understand why that happens from if you watch episode 1. And he ends up, you know, they all kind of sneak in to the, and he makes it very clear. He says, we can't, you know, at first when he hears the plan, he's like, we can't do this. Too many people are going to die. This is not okay. And then he finally convinces them, hey, I've got a plan to where, you know, very few people, if any, need to die. And which is, you know, whatever. And so they end up, you know, kind of invading very quietly. And you have where Princess Diana is just coming out on a moonlight walk in the garden, and she sees Sho, you know, because here he is sneaking up to the castle and everything, you know, totally unexpected. And Sho explains to her what exactly, you know, this is all after the rape scene and everything, and obviously, you know, they try to show off that it was traumatic. Sho, you know, explains to her what they're going to do, and then Prince Dunan is coming out, And Diana says, "Show, you need to go hide." And so he goes back in the woods with some of his nomad friends. But
he can still see what's going on.
But he can see what's going on. And so Dunan comes down and says, "Oh, you've been rubbing yourself in the garden, and all this crap." Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so she says, "Oh, yeah, Prince Dunan, please take me now, take me, master," and all this shit. And obviously, Sho flips out, but it's all a ruse.
It's all a ruse.
Right. It's all, and what ends up happening is Diana takes a blade.
He's a cuck.
Yeah, yes, it's a blade away from Dunan, who's, groping her now and everything.
And then she stabs him.
And she stabs him with it.
Yep.
And he dies.
Kills him.
And that's where the line from... then Sho runs out, to make sure that she's okay and everything, and his cohorts, and that's where the line that I yelled at the beginning of this episode. Yeah, it's like, "Diana, why can't you understand my burning love?" Like it's a terrible voice acting. Yeah, it's just so funny the way we both died laughing.
The script just has Diana ... Why can't you understand ... my burning love.
My burning love. It's so good. And so we were laughing our asses off when we saw that part. But anyway, he dies. Prince Dunan dies. His comeuppance is there. For the rape and everything. So justice effectively kind of gets served.
I don't know. I think he could have died in a more gruesome way after all the shit that he did.
Sure. Well, okay. Yeah, within the story, I understand that. So then, Sho and the nomads, they eventually... I mean, because Princess Diana says, she understands what they're doing, because Sho tells her, we're going to take over Doria tonight. And she says, "I understand, and I'll help you." And so they all go right into King Randus's bedroom. They wake him up from bed, and and they tell him, "Your rule is over." And Sho says, your whole family can go free if you leave now, and you tell people to just accept this peacefully, that this is going to happen." And Randus agrees, to it all. And so there was little to no bloodshed, other than Dunan.
But he kills himself.
But then Randus kills himself and says, "I trust your words. Take care of my family," and he kills himself with more terrible voice acting.
Yes.
But and then it ends, with as little bloodshed as possible, Sho ends up taking over Doria. But the interesting thing is, and I like this part, is that he doesn't want to be king. And he says, "I turn over all of my, I am the sovereign, but I am turning over all of my sovereignty to the chief, to this chieftain of the children of the wind." And he says, "But I guarantee you," he says, "taxes, well, this is where the taxes come up again." He says, we're dropping the taxes, and he says, "and we will have a free market." It's just and we're sitting here and it's like, yeah.
It's like a regular ANCAP. See, now if the BDSM didn't turn on the ANCAPs, if the rape scene didn't turn on the ANCAps, the taxes
and the free market should run wild. On the ANCAP. I just thought it's like, that's amazing, It's like, and we will have a free market. All trade will be open. I mean, that's literally what they say, or what Sho says. And then he goes off to leave. So, but I really love that. I mean, obviously, I dig the mention of a free market, but I also, and free trade, which part and parcel. But I love the fact that he doesn't want the power. Yep. He's like, "Just leave me the fuck alone, and I just want to go." And he goes off. He sets Diana free. Mm-hmm. She doesn't even have to go with him,
but she chooses to.
But that's the thing. That's the rub at the end. No pun intended. is that she wishes to be his slave.
Yeah.
At the end, he tells her, it's like, "No, you're a free woman. Go on. You don't have to do this." And she's like, "No, my life. I want to be your slave." And calling him master, all this shit. Even though
she's kind of a gangster, I guess. Yeah.
Even though throughout the episode, Sho keeps telling her, "Don't call me master."
Yeah. He says, "Call me Sho."
Yeah. He doesn't
want the power. He's
right. So, which you understand Sho's dynamic in owning her and kind of like the trick around it if you watch the first episode. But anyway, and that's how it ends. is that
they ride off into the sunset on one
right.
of those horse dinosaur things.
Exactly. They just end up riding off into the sunset, and that'll lead us into episode 3. So, do you have any other comments on the ending? Otherwise, Stephanie, I'm curious. What did you think of the episode?
No, it just seemed like
overall?
the whole thing was over, but there's still like 4 more episodes that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, because the first, episode 1 opens up with the coup, where Randus takes over Doria, and then here you have the end of Randus. Like, you kind of putting them together. They're about 45 minutes apiece.
And the taxes are over. So
yeah, taxes are gone, and there's a free market.
Yeah.
Okay, we all live happily ever after.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what did you think of episode 2? Pardon me, I have the hiccups.
I thought it was good. I'm starting to get more into the story.
Mm-hmm.
The character of Princess Diana is a little bit lacking some characterization, I think.
Wait for the other episodes.
Okay.
But no, that's a fair critique to make right now.
I mean, yeah, right now it's like kind of unclear, like, well, what is her real motivations? Like, what is her story really? Why is she doing this? Why does she love Sho so much?
I get
it that they were childhood friends, but like, is that the only reason she loves him, or does she love him because he wants a free market and wants to get rid of taxes?
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's why I love him.
Yeah. So, but you're digging it,
I'm digging it. Yeah, I want to see the next ones. I can't imagine what's going to happen next because it doesn't seem like anything could happen.
Yeah, we still have 3 episodes.
Seems like it's nicely tied up with a nice little string.
Yeah, there it is.
Package.
So all right. How about we do this? Because my plan is, even after these 5, after Fencer Minerva, we'll watch La Blue Girl, we'll watch Bible Black, we'll watch all these hentai classics, the Venus 5, and because I, to varying degrees, enjoy each to varying degrees, especially when you talk about Bible Black. That's kind of that's an odd one.
Which ones have the most tentacles?
La Blue Girl. Okay. Blue Girl and Venus 5 are loaded with tentacles.
Oh, shit.
So, and we can watch, there's some of these hentais that are, like, very, like, kind of kitschy. I don't want to say teeny bop, but, like, they're very kind of high schoolish and sort of, more comedic.
Yeah.
Like, this is pretty serious. The voice acting is comedic.
The voice acting makes it funny, yeah.
Right, but the story itself is actually, dead serious. As to where some of them kind of become, comedies more than anything. So we plan on doing all that. But I guess what I'm going to institute now is a rating system. Okay. So what do you think? 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 or A to F? That reminds me too much of school. I don't know. We can do A to F.
A to F. I was going to say.
All right. Let's do A to F. So what do you rank Fencer Minerva episode 2, The Dawn? What do you give it?
Oh, fuck. I give it a C.
A C? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Average.
Because I didn't like the rape scene.
Yeah.
But I did like the first scene.
Yeah. No,
and
right
and I'm liking the story.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. I think I might give it maybe a C myself.
Yeah.
Or maybe a B.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in comparison to, like, some other stuff. Like, I was a little disappointed that there wasn't any lesbian action.
Yes, that's right. That was missing for me too.
Yeah, I mean, and something actually, and I'll admit this, something that is found kind of lacking in a lot of hentai is actually guy on guy. You don't get that.
Yeah,
a lot.
there's none of that.
So I just want people to be aware that I'm conscious of that, and that's a thing.
There's even if there's like lesbian scenes, there's no like love between women, which I would love to see.
Well, you might get that.
Oh, good.
So,
good.
We'll leave it at that.
Good.
The rest the rest of this podcast series will be out in pretty short order here. Actually, I want to have it all out by end of September if we can do that.
That's a pretty ambitious goal. We're
going to
be watching a lot of porn here.
Well, hey.
It's hard work, but
we can watch it or live it.
It's hard work, but somebody has to do it.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, Stephanie, thank you so much for enjoying the episode with me and for doing this little podcast.
You're welcome. Show.
Diana, why can't you understand my burning love? Carpe Lucem, everybody. We'll see you on the other side. Woo.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.